Okay, can you guys see the screen?
Yeah.
Cool. Actually, I'd like to look at the issues. Okay. So, still trying to get this 07 release done. Where shall we start? There's still a lot open here. And then we added some more related to running on OpenShift and a bunch of other issues there.
I think that there's there's some architectural changes that are we're talking about for this release. So I'm wondering, what the scope of 0.7 should be with some of those architecture changes that are needed, and what all we really want to accomplish, and when we want to have this down.
You're talking about the building set from source versus
and making like a pod per OSD as opposed to a pod per node so things like that.
Those are pretty big changes. And I guess one of the question comes up is, should we try to get a release without them and then come back and do this work? I don't know. I think Sebastian and some of the folks from Red Hat are on the call too.
Yeah. Just one question. Hi guys. Hey, happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
What's the due date for 0.7?
We were planning to get a release out this month or earlier in the month, but I'm trying to think of if we try to optimize for a May release with Mimic, right? You guys have a bunch of requirements to get there, and some of them should get front loaded, like what Jared's talking about. Some of these architectural changes would be nice to get these in earlier than later. So I don't know. I mean, it's up for discussion. I don't think there's. I don't know, Dan and others. Is there anything pressing right now to get 0.7 out? Are you guys? Is there anything on the, say, quantum side or others that's pressing 0.7 right now?
I don't think so. We are pushing ahead on some particular things, but I think they're 0.8 things.
Yeah.
Is there any notable feature on 0.7? Because I don't recall having been any, apart from the usual bug fixes and all. If there are not any, I actually would rather get some of these architecture changes that we talked about, like one pod per OSD, because that will allow us to easily attack and solve all these issues regarding OSD not restarting and crashing and all that.
Well, there's just looking at the milestone right here, we talked about a bunch of things. They're all incremental changes. There's nothing, big here, but this whole idea of using local storage or underlying persistent volumes and how it relates to permissions and how it relates to volumes being mounted, and there's this whole category of things that I think is still speculative at this point. I don't think we have a good solution yet. And adding the OpenShift scenarios and some of the Red Hat scenarios just makes it even clearer that we need to figure out how we use host path or local storage and permissions around them and everything else. So I feel like we should think about that for 0.7, given the scope of it and given the that it is going to change a bunch of things.
And it feels like we have to answer those questions or make those changes before we declare beta, or at least it's much harder to make breaking changes. That feels like a potentially big breaking change.
So there's that.
And speaking from the quantum side, I think I have an interest in moving the architectural changes forward in the schedule sooner. To get the instability that they're going to bring out of the way. And I guess I'm also really focused on, keeping master stable, right?
That's right.
So, keeping the bar very high for stability there. But I'd rather pipeline the architectural changes earlier in the process.
I agree. And, if you want to work backwards, it's looking like, if you say that May is when we went to, if we shoot for May as a V1 for Rook, right? Let's work backwards from that. And it would seem to me that, we do something like the 0.7 release, a 0.8 release, probably in March, and then V1 in May. And that the May date is interesting because it's KubeCon Europe. It's, I guess that Sebastian and others can fill in here, but it's also Mimic, right?
Yeah, that's the time frame. Yeah.
Time frame is, as I understand it, is May, and also Red Hat Enterprise Storage release is around that time as well, if I understand correctly.
Yeah, and there are a bunch of other events too, like none maybe container focused, but there is OpenStack Summit and there is Red Hat Summit as well after this.
That's right.
So May, June. So it's a pretty good time frame.
So I wonder if we should try to optimize for a May timeframe to getting V1, and then work backwards from that and figure out what the roadmap needs to look like to kind of get us there.
One question on that topic too, Bassam, that I would have is I would appreciate a bit of a refresher in terms of what's going to be in Mimic, some of the big features there. One of them I'm kind of curious about is that I know there had been talk about managing placement groups better and kind of being able to abstract that away from any user's concern, that not expose placement groups there. So is that going to be something in Mimic, or what other features are there?
Yeah, maybe somebody from the Red Hat folks can talk about this.
Well, personally, I don't know. What I know that can be beneficial for containers that we hope we will get in Mimic is the removal of the ceph.conf. That's one of the big things we want to have, and that will be really helpful when it comes to containers and also...
Sorry, removal of what?
Of the ceph config file.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So you just inject new args and new configs to the non-key value store instead of having to change the ceph.conf. And so
that's probably less of an issue in Rook scenarios, but I see how it's useful in general. I think where Jared was going with this is that, are there any things that we need to, from a core Ceph standpoint, do differently for the Mimic release?
I don't think of anything at the moment. It's not really Ceph core related, but we really have to start using Ceph volume as of Mimic.
Yep.
So it's not a core Ceph, but it's a configuration of the OSDs. So we have to get this. But this is part of the sequence of having one OSD per pod, and then start using Ceph volume.
And Sebastian, Ceph volume, that's for doing the provisioning and setup of the disks to prepare them to be ready for consumption by OSDs.
Yeah, it's the preparation of the OSD.
Cool.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and that ties to the whole. I have questions around that and say local storage and privileged containers, and it just feels like this whole area of how we consume volumes underneath OSDs and MONs. And how they're provisioned, how they're set up, what security permissions they have on them. That whole area is still unsolved.
It is, because we are kind of waiting for Kubernetes to get this,
Right.
so we can consume it. But then we have to have something in between, like an intermediate solution.
Right. And they're they're going to declare it, I believe. I think it would still be alpha for 110, or maybe it's beta for 110, the local storage or local volumes. Do any of you guys know?
It seems like they were shooting for beta in 110, but it still seemed pretty iffy.
And 110 would be in, say, March, right? The first quarter.
Should be.
Yeah, but even if we don't get the whole complete solution with local storage and privileged container all done, I think having one OSC per pod is still going to be beneficial. For example, in Quantum, we have a lot of issues where if one OSC just fails, like process OSC just fails, the whole cluster doesn't come up. So issues like this will be better managed if we had one OSD per pod. Because in this case, we can just restart a pod, we can isolate that pod and that OSC or that device, as opposed to having it to affect the entire cluster.
Yeah. And to get there, we need the discovery of devices, basically through local storage or through our agent or something.
And also, if multiple OSDs are sharing, say, a metadata volume for journals or whatever, then that becomes even more complicated. So I think I feel we need to think about the design around all of this. It still feels fairly speculative right now.
Hello?
Hey, sorry, I lost the voice there. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder if the best way to approach this is to kind of start thinking about some of these large topics and just doing a design around them. Like getting a design doc in here, getting it reviewed, figuring out how to attach us to all this stuff before we proceed much further.
Yeah, but it seems like there needs to be some sort of overarching design here that's kind of at more of a high level of how all of these smaller components are going to be fit together and what's going to be our approach for a lot of these things, because it seems like we've got individual issues open for all of them, but how they all tie in together and what the overall vision is that's what we're missing right now.
Yeah, so we have local storage or local volumes, separating OSDs into a pod each.
Ceph volume for provisioning.
Ceph volume for provisioning, running as a non-root user.
And the whole security aspect
around that. How we take stuff from upstream. All of those seem related to me. Not some of them are, tangential relationships, but they are still related, or at least would impact others.
Yeah, there is some kind of a cascading effect on when you do one OSD per pod, then you have to come up with a strategy on how to detect devices. So I thought we almost agreed on having something like an init container that scan all the devices available, and then you have the second step which is the container does the preparation, and then the ultimate step is to convert all of that using subvolume.
Yeah,
I had some idea, rough idea of having the agent kind of like when they start, kind of out to discover all the devices and present it to the user either as local volume if they're ready in beta, but if not, we can have our own API objects, and then that would take care of the discovery.
Yeah. I go back to so the desire to make these changes. First, I feel like we have to have some kind of blueprint design for how we, what we're going to do, and ideally we can sequence them such that we can take smaller bites and keep master, stable. Otherwise, I think if we're going to take on a really big chunk, then we'd have to branch and work in a bigger branch, which I prefer not to do. Like for example, we can switch to using apt-get or deb packages inside the container if we can figure out some issues around it, and then we can layer other stuff on top of it. But it would be great if we can have, a overall design of what we want to accomplish in what order.
Yeah, and Bassam, a quick thought on that is, one way that we've done some of our bigger designs in recent history here for Rook is where one person goes off and does a full and complete deep dive design document that's submitted as a pull request to the repo, and that approach has been it works well for things that are of designs that are kind of more isolated, but when you have designs that are really really kind of overall and broad in scope here, I think that a suggestion for an approach here would be more of a live collaborative sort of effort, like on a shared Google Doc or something, where you can kind of keep that. You don't have one person working off in isolation. You have it more as a live effort by more than one person. You probably need an owner on the whole effort, but a more live and collaborative effort is probably going to be nice here.
Agree. So are we saying? Okay, so I think we should shoot for that. Let's. Who wants to own it? Jared, do you want to take it?
Yeah, I can probably own it. What I'm trying to finish off right now is being able to update the cluster CRD. Adding and removing storage to a live cluster, basically, which has been kind of a pretty large feature in itself. But I'm running into a lot of those issues about how would things be done with separating OSDs out into their own pods and things like that. So I feel like I have a fair amount of domain knowledge here to at least be able to drive an effort like that.
Okay, and Sebastian, are you? I'm trying to figure out you and your team's engagement. Are you guys are you going to be dedicated on this stuff, or are you,
I'm full-time on this, yeah.
Full-time on this, okay.
I'm personally full-time on this, yeah.
Okay.
Full-time Sebastian Hahn, that's pretty awesome.
That is awesome.
I accept.
Okay. So maybe between you and Jared and some of other people's time, myself and maybe Travis and others and Steve, we can collaborate on this document and figure out a path forward.
Definitely.
Sounds great.
Yep.
By the way, Dave, is it better now? Is the audio better or is it worse?
Sorry, say that again, Alexander?
Yeah, you sound much better.
The document will be openly available for the Rook team, or?
Yeah. It'll be a Google Docs. We should share a link, and then we can all chime in, and then try to get it to design, and then hopefully there'll be bite-sized chunks we can chew off that we could just get in.
Good.
Yeah, so what I'll do, Bassam, is get that document going, kind of get the structure of it going, so that we can start being a little bit more collaborative on it, but also probably track that with a GitHub issue as well.
Sounds good.
Okay.
And there's been some work done, like Sebastian's created a pull request. I have a pull request open. Like
we have 3 issues for that as well.
And it's
Steve and Travis have done work with local storage recently too. So there's a whole lot of things to pull together to this.
We got to pull them all together, and then there's some there's even more investigation and exploration to be done in some areas. And there's some stuff upstream too. I'm not sure. I understand. Like for example, will there be ARM HF builds published by upstream stuff? And there were a couple more issues around the repository, APT repositories and others. Some of those go upstream, and we should probably front load these as well, because they're probably longer cycle there.
Yeah, I mean, if you've, I responded to that issue. I haven't been able to reproduce it, but if there is a problem with the packages, then yeah, someone from our team should be highlighted. I can do the relay for this.
Okay, cool.
I don't think we're trying to do RMHF builds upstream at all.
We're not?
No.
Okay.
By we, I mean the Ceph project.
Yeah, I mean, I see ARM64, but I don't see ARM-HF even though it seems like they are building. Okay, well, we have to talk about that. We're currently publishing ARM-HF in Rook when we were building Ceph from source.
Oh, yes, you can build them. I'm just saying that nothing in our CI is building them.
I see. Yeah. Yeah, that kind of messes with using deb packages, unless we decide to drop
It's an issue.
ARM-HF support.
I agree.
Okay. What about, let's switch topics a little bit. What about CSI? Do we want to say that we're switching to CSI for the V1 release, or is this something we're going to punt on for, say, the May release?
I think we should engage with CSI in V1. The reason is because when we create volumes, the volume metadata, this object metadata is it will have like flex volume, for example. It will not have CSI, and then if that happens, and when we do an upgrade to use CSI, when we turn the switch to use CSI, it will be difficult migration because we will have to go through all these PVC objects or PV objects and convert them from using flex volume underneath to CSI. So the sooner we adopt CSI, I think the easier will be down the road.
Yeah, I guess I'm just trying to understand if we're committing to it and who's going to do the work around CSI, and then there's also the user mode support as part of that, which is currently, we had plans to put that in the Rook agent. But I wonder if that belongs in CSI as well.
Yeah, there's two things that that we need for CSI and then having user mode volume. Those are the things. Those are CSI and mount propagation, which are both alpha right now as of Kubernetes 1.9. But as talking to the Kubernetes guys, Sad said he sees CSI and mount propagation to be a beta. For 1.10. We also will need raw block storage as well to be beta. So there's three things that I know so far that Rook needs from Kubernetes to be beta. Of course, we can do this if the user turn those on through feature gates.
Well, what is the time frame for CSI?
It sounds like it's beta in 1.10.
Yeah, it's already alpha right now, 1.9, and SAT said they are shooting for beta for 1.10.
And when do you need to support CSI? Like to be a storage vendor?
I don't think there is a need. They're gonna. My understanding is they're gonna keep flex volume support for forever, as far as I understand it.
Yeah, that's my understanding as well. Is that flex volumes aren't going away anytime soon.
The question is that
at some point, CSI will start offering features that aren't offered in Flex, and it'll be compelling to have a CSI plugin. I'm wondering when we see that point in time coming.
Yeah. Yeah, so from last meeting that I went to the storage SIG meeting, they don't want to add anything to the Flex Volume API. Because they want to have that effort being done on CSI. So, for example, one thing that
I understood that. I understood that, Steve. But I'm wondering when will it become compelling? In other words, necessary to have a CSI plugin. I'm just.
I think
if it's going to start being available in 1.10, it might be still a couple of quarters before people are expecting Rook to support CSI.
If we're talking about having to use a local volume, for example, local storage, we need CSI because we need raw block storage. and we don't get Roblox storage right now. Is an alpha feature. So there's a lot of pieces that we need to be beta, and Roblox storage is never gonna be part of Flex Volume. I asked during the KubeCon whether whether Flex Volume ever gonna support Roblox storage, because that's needed for local volume, and they say no, it's not gonna be supported, and we're not gonna accept it because they don't want to change the API. So if
Steve, I'm not sure you're answering what Dan is getting at. But it's more of a question of, when should we really, get off our asses and, get something shipped for that supports CSI. I think that's really the more the question. My response to that would be at least after 1.10 beta. Not at all before that. Does it really
right? But 1.10 is going to be in March. So
right. So knowing the roadmap beyond that, I think, is something that we'll need more clarity on.
Right. And I guess I'm coming at this from the perspective of, if we're going to keep building, into our flex volume and, investing in the flex volume, is that a rational decision, or should we just start investing in CSI? That's kind of, I'm especially thinking about when we start doing user space stuff, like running NBD, RBD, or PCMU Runner and others. Should that work go into the flex volume?
My gut feel for that, Bassam, is that that's going to be effort we want to do towards CSI.
Yeah. Do any of the Red Hat folks, have you guys looked at CSI or for Ceph, or have you started any work there?
Not me.
Forming.
Are there plans to do Ceph CSI right now? CSI?
Hi, this is Huamin. Yeah, the plan is we're going to have RBD and CFFS for CSI drivers. It's just a matter of the timing when we can stand them up and get code ready. Because we have the New Year shutdown, that hasn't happened in time yet. Also, because I don't have the cycles to do it right now.
Yeah, and Humain, do you think that this is that work mostly like kernel for the kernel RBD and kernel CFFS?
Yeah, for now that's going to be the goal. We're still using the kernel RBD and CFFS.
And is this like something that is on your plate for, say, the next 4 or 5 months?
Oh yeah, definitely. We should have the scope for the next quarter. Actually, this quarter. We are already in 2018. We should have it in this quarter.
Okay, so I wonder if we can essentially collaborate on getting a CSI plugin.
Yeah, definitely.
For the Mimic / whatever we call that May release, right? Okay. That can essentially subsume what Rook is doing now with Flex Volume, but also potentially add some of the user mode stuff.
That can be done.
And it could be, if we can get a collaborative effort here, we can probably get a couple of people on this and try to get it to a point where we can, use it everywhere.
Yeah, sure. Let's come up with a plan and get this done.
Okay, so is that something that maybe Steve and you, Maine, could try to figure out a design for, and what we're going to do there?
Yeah, that's fine. I can drive it. I can put something together.
Can you guys work together on this?
Yes, we can do that. Oh,
and maybe figure out what the timing is with 6 storage, or in terms of what needs to get done and when. I mean, I'm hoping they are truly going to make it CSI beta in 1.10. And 1.10 is there are all the alpha releases of it, right?
Right. Right now, CSI is already in 1.9, so we can start experimenting with it even currently right now. So But yes, 1.10 is they're shooting 1.10 to be beta.
And where do we think that work goes? Is it a separate repo for Ceph CSI? Does it go in the Rook tree? Does it go in the... That's the other thing I don't have clarity on.
I think you should go into the Rook repo because it's the CSI is more of a consumer type of plugins, right? So Rook is actually the consumer in of CSI in Rook in Kubernetes.
It's kind of yes and no. There's a Kubernetes CSI organization, and currently most of the drivers are over there, including Cinder and Fast Ascasi. It's being tested as well. So definitely anybody can fork it and create his own repo.
So the Kubernetes organization is testing everything in the Kubernetes CSI repo?
We are working on the community is working on the E2E test, and eventually going to be, hopefully, going to have
Let's get this straight, because from the last meeting I heard that it was the responsibility of the vendors and consumer to store their own plugins, but stuff like generic like iSCSI and MBD and all that, there will be a special repository for it. But from what I heard is that they don't want the maintainer of the repository maintain something that they don't understand the code for. So that's the thing that I'm not sure about.
Yeah, definitely we can get back to the community and see where else the prep.
Okay. So it sounds like there's we need to come up with a plan for CSI. That's another one of those large topics that I feel like we need to address. Right now, the story is Rook uses the flex volume, and that has some issues, and it doesn't support all the features we want. But I think let's try to come up with a plan for CSI, and then decide maybe in a future planning meeting whether to make that part of the May release or not, after looking at what the plan is. Does that sound fair?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's good.
And Steve and Humain, you guys are going to look at the CSI thing together? Yeah. Okay, cool. Awesome. And then there's the issue of, well, actually, I had a question for Travis. Is all the 1.8 support for 1.8 and CRD patterns and everything else, is that all done now?
Right, with the code generation, and yeah, it's all done that I'm.
Is there anything specific in 1.9 from a CRD standpoint that we need to address?
Not that I've seen. I probably should double check, but it was mainly 1.8 with all that.
Okay. Mm-hmm. What about the using the Prometheus Ceph Manager module? Where is that, Alexander?
Yeah, well, that's kind of depending on how Jared sees it too, because right now the status is that it would work with one manager right now, but I think I don't know his name right now, but he wrote that he's working on a patch upstream for the Prometheus metrics module, and that this would fix. So we can revert our change to back to one manager, back to two.
And that requires a new release from upstream Ceph?
I don't know if it's Ceph or just a module. That we would need to ask one of the Ceph guys here.
Okay.
Yeah, the Ceph modules are all in tree, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, but I think we can easily do any backports if necessary.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
That sounds good. So yeah, as said, we kind of can go ahead and go merge it right now when I when I fix Jared's comment, and then we have the metrics on one manager. And when this patch is released, as I wrote, we can just with the patch, the pull request, to revert the revert of us using only one manager back to two managers. We can just kind of put in the patched version of the Prometheus metrics module or the version subversion 2.
Yeah, I don't think the running two Ceph managers is important.
But when a node fails, and it takes it takes about, depending on how you set it, about 1 or 2 minutes until the node is even set as not ready. And the second point there is, when the node is not ready, it takes another, I think it was about 5 minutes till the pods on that node are even moved to another node. So if you should really,
and so that's a gap.
You're 5 minutes without monitoring. And I'm already kind of going crazy if I have one node lost, and the monitoring doesn't always report metrics anymore.
I see.
So
Okay.
it would be good if we really go back when this patch is in Ceph to running two managers, just for high availability.
Okay.
For all cases, kind of.
Yeah, 5 minutes seems like a long gap in collection.
As I said, it's you can tune it, but it's not by default. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that I think you're right, Alex. That we can go ahead forward now with merging the work you have now after the last couple of comments in that PR, such that we have the Ceph Manager module, reporting metrics, and then in the future when you can have multiple instances of Ceph Manager, then we'll go back and revisit that. But yeah, I think we'll be good to go ahead as soon as you finish the last comments on that PR.
Yep. Yeah, I'll keep that in mind with the switch back to two managers.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks for your work on this feature, Alex.
No problem. Yeah. Well. Yeah.
And so, okay. Let's see. Yeah, I'm just looking at the roadmap, and it looks like this needs to be reworked a little bit given our discussion.
Yeah, I think the user mode stuff, and then the placement group or data placement, the placement group balancer. I think that's just a module that Sage wrote, right?
Yeah,
that one's not hard, but the one right above it, I think that I can't see that getting a lot of love in this time frame.
No.
There's also a couple of those. It feels like we're already far enough, or as far as shutdown and restart issues. I don't know that what is left there, or durability of state. No, maybe the modern reliability seems like we're in a good place.
Yeah. And then there is snapshotting, which I'm not sure what the Heptio folks are looking at that. We have a meeting with them tomorrow or Friday.
Okay. I kind of also had a talk with them, and they were kind of currently, for the demo at least, they did an RBD copy and everything.
Yeah, but I think they're looking for a CRD for snapshotting.
Just one thing maybe to keep in mind there, that it depends on which level the users want to do the backups. Because they kind of have two things they want to do right now. They want to bring backups through storage providers like us, Rook, with an API, and backups on the file level through something like Stash or Restic.
Yeah.
For user information. So they kind of want to do both, depending on what you are using as a user.
There is a snapshot controller project that creates all the APIs and all that in this external storage repo, the same repo where we get the provisioner. So it might be worth to take a look at that and have a Rook implementation on that.
Okay. What else is there? Any other kind of high level things that we didn't cover?
One thing we haven't really touched yet is the implementation of upgrades or automated upgrades.
Oh, right. Of course.
That's a pretty big area, or something to start on sooner than later.
So one question on that: do the manual steps that we have right now are they working okay for people? I've seen a bunch of people on Slack upgraded from say 0.5 to 0.6, and even minor releases of 0.6.
They seem to be. That's the impression I get from Slack.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the biggest problems we've had on a recurring basis is just breaking changes that go into master, and not not stepping through a conscious upgrade effort around those, and then people run into kind of like mismatching pod templates versus what the code's expecting, that type of thing.
That's right.
But yeah, I think that Travis had walked through the manual upgrade user guide recently, and did that work for you, Travis? Like in the 0.6 release timeframe?
Right. Yeah. It's just with 0.7, for example, I know there's at least one change I had where the upgrade, maybe not that the upgrade steps were out of date, but if you didn't follow them, then you run into issues during the upgrade. Maybe that was it. But yeah, if upgrade's a complicated problem, so just not having started on that yet, if we're saying we want it when we reach beta, I guess it'd be after beta when we say we'd have it.
Yeah, it feels like we're kind of limping along right now with a manual user guide and a fully fleshed out design for how upgrade would work. We've accomplished both those tasks, but yeah, the fact that we haven't actually started writing code for it in the operator is it's concerning. But I don't know if I would place it ahead of any of the other things we have to do right now too.
Right. It wouldn't make sense to do it probably either before we do architectural changes around local storage and things.
Right.
Yeah, I also think that it would be better to, also the 0.7 release, get all the architectural changes in. Because when we say, hey, it's beta, and we don't, and if it's a really hard upgrade path for the users, I don't think that would be that good of an experience then.
Yeah. I don't see it how this all gets done in 0.7. It sounds like upgrade is going to be pushed out to me.
I think upgrade was on the 0.8 in the roadmap too.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true.
Interesting. And then the other one I'm concerned about is kind of refactoring the CRDs to support multiple backends, or at least making sure that we have the ability to add, at least separate the parts that are Ceph-specific from others. I know, Travis, you started some of this work.
Right, and I think there'd be more to do, depending on the next backend we add and how much similarity there is, what we can reuse from the CRDs. I just wonder how much we can do before the second one is actually added.
I think we should go ahead and create some kind of design doc again for that, more of like a
I think so too.
Kind of blueprint for, hey, you want to add a storage backend. How, where would you need to change things, or overall, how would the CRD look? Because, as I kind of said with the thing with upgrade, or with the other topic before, with 0.7, if you go like, it's better, and we are going to change the CRD, most users understand that there are changes going to happen in alpha, but not in beta. Or possible, but it's, not, as I said, not that good for the user experience.
Well, once the CRD is declared beta, then it's you can't have breaking changes to them. You have to migrate them. So that's exactly why I'm bringing this up right now. At a minimum, I'd argue that the cluster and pool CRDs should get some treatment for, what parts are Ceph specific and what parts are not, so that when we declare them beta, it's not a big pain.
I think it would be overall good.
It feels a little naive to jump ahead and write a design doc about what it would take to do all this work. Given that you're not actually doing the work. I mean, it just seems unlikely you're going to get that correct. I think I sort of agree with what Bassam said. Let's do the obvious things. And I could certainly imagine writing here's what I think might be necessary kind of document, but a step higher level than a design doc, I think.
Well, let me make another suggestion. I mean, why not say why not, for example, add a really simple NFS backend as a test for this? Just start NFS server on a local directory.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a great baby step, but it's just a baby step, right?
It is, but I think it'll help refine the pattern, maybe more than just say abstractly defining here, this property goes there and that property goes here or whatever in a doc.
It feels like a great thing to do, but it feels to me that when you go to add another system, say a system that's as sophisticated as Ceph, there's going to be a lot of surprises.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I definitely will have that item and look at least a high level. Here's what we're thinking. Here are the steps.
And my understanding is that that's going to be from a CNCF standpoint, it's going to be when Rook goes to incubation, that would be an important criteria. At inception, my understanding it's not going to be a criteria.
Yeah.
So, but I'm sensitive to declaring, the things beta and then changing them drastically and having to take on migration around it.
Right. Yeah, and I'll definitely focus on the CRDs and what might need to be factored out there, so we don't have to worry about those breaking changes as much.
So it sounds like we have like 3 or 4 design docs here that need to be kind of thought through. And then from that, I think we can decide on what the next steps are in each of these. Okay. Anything else? Any other? Okay. Yeah, let's front load these designs and see where we stand.
Yeah, I agree with that, Bassam. Is there any update on CNCF with Rook?
My understanding, there's the next meeting is the January 16th meeting.
Oh, the 16th. Okay.
And we'll get an update then.
Cool.
And the one this week didn't happen.
No. It was the next meeting was planned to be the 16th. So,
got it.
Yeah.
Is someone going to create issues for creating those design docs so we can keep track of it?
Yeah, I think we should.
Yeah, so the ones we have are, I'm going to be the owner of kind of how all these 0.7 features are the overarching architecture for how they all interact together, right? And then Steve is in CSI.
Yeah.
And then Travis is like CRD, multiple backend support, stuff like that.
Yep.
Sounds right.
All right, so let's each, as an owner, then take that, open up a GitHub issue to track it, and then get the docs going.
Sounds good. And yeah, work with your counterparts. Whatever, let's make this a very collaborative effort.
Yeah, and one thing I'm definitely very excited about is the collaboration that we're getting now with the Ceph and Red Hat guys on board, having their guidance and having their input is already been very valuable. So glad to have these guys on.
Absolutely. Cool. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right. See ya.
Bye-bye.
See you. Bye.
See you, boys.